Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Tonight we are here to recap day one of NFL free agency. Yes, for those who don't know, NFL free agency is technically slated to begin Wednesday, but with the new rules, you can open the negotiating tampering window, as they call it, the legal tampering window. Opens up today. It opened up at 12 p.m. We didn't see the normal flurry of deals I expected, Nick, but there was a lot going on in today's free agency. So we're going to talk about a slew of things. We're going to talk about the markets that developed at each position and what that means to us. We're going to talk about the Giants day one, which included 2 signings from outside of the organization and multiple re-signings. We're also going to discuss maybe players on the Giants right now who we now feel a little bit less confident will be coming back to the team and re-signing with the team. But maybe start here, Nick. What was maybe your biggest surprise of day one? It doesn't have to just be Giants. Just overall, what was maybe your biggest surprise of day one?
I don't know if it's my biggest surprise, Dan, but it seems like the linebacker market was pretty robust. And we have discussed pretty extensively on this podcast how the linebacker position is kind of like the running back position right now. It's a bit devalued, but we saw the Chicago Bears go out and sign 2 of the desires of the New York Giant fans, right? With TJ Edwards, which was a hell of a deal for the Chicago Bears, and then Tremaine Edmonds, who I think got like 70 million with like 50 million guaranteed. I don't think Joe Schoen was going to fork up that kind of dough for Tremaine Edmonds. But we also saw David Long go to with a solid deal to the Miami Dolphins. We started seeing linebackers fly off the board pretty early, and it got me a little nervous. It got a lot of Giants fans pretty nervous. But then the Giants went and they signed Bobby Okereke, a 26-year-old free agent from the Indianapolis Colts, former Stanford Cardinal. And I'm pleased with that signing. I think the Giants got the second-level defender that they've been desperately looking for years now.
Yeah, I think that was a good point. I mean, the linebacker market was more robust than people think. Also, it was kind of all over the place, like you said. I mean, you had Tremaine Edmonds getting a massive deal. You had TJ Edwards getting a smaller deal than some people expected. Maybe, that had to do some, at least, with him not having the market people expected. Some people may feel like he was a bit of a product of that team playing behind that defensive line. It's hard to say. But then we also saw David Long, a player who has been phenomenal when healthy, but has had injury issues, go for a very cheap deal, almost like a prove-it deal. And then finally Okereke. But Okereke, is it Okereke?
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it. Yeah, Okereke, I believe. When he was drafted, it was Okereke. But then I thought I heard somebody
say not Okereke. Yeah,
that's what everyone referred to him as, though, during the draft process. But I think in recent years he's corrected people and said it was Okereke. And I feel like that just sounds so much better. But not even just those ones that we brought up. Like Alex Singleton got like 18 million on a 3-year deal. Like linebackers that we didn't necessarily expect to come away with almost $20 million contracts signed for multiple years. They were signed. So it says something about the linebacker market.
And I think what it's saying to me, at least from a takeaway standpoint, is the NFL is correcting itself on the linebacker market. They're understanding the value of this position and what it means to a defense. On the flip side, the NFL corrected itself the other way on the wide receiver market. We didn't see a single one of these free agent wide receivers, Darius Slayton included, from the Giants, get signed today. They're waiting it out. They're testing. This market is simmering. It's the opposite of it's simmering right now. It's not that hot, and I'm not surprised about that, really, because I think something had to give after last offseason with the Christian Kirk contract, with all the new deals from the trades. Something had to give there. It couldn't continue in that direction. And so that was a bit surprising to me. Now let me get your thoughts, Nick, on your overall feelings with how the Giants approached day one of free agency and your overall your thoughts on that.
I was pleased, Dan. I mean, I saw on Twitter and a lot of Giant fans, and if you're listening, that's cool. Like, I have nothing against you, but I feel like a lot of people were like jumping off the bridge when they saw TJ Edwards, when they saw Tremaine Edmonds, when they saw a lot of these names that we've been discussing over the last several weeks come off the board. But I was like, look, the Giants are going to build this team through the draft. Joe Schoen has said that on multiple occasions. We have brought that up several times on this podcast, and we are going to build through the draft, and we are just looking for competent players to replenish this roster. We were a little uncertain if Joe Schoen was going to spend big. It does not appear like he is going to spend big. But in day one, he went out and he added a very important depth piece to the interior defensive line in Rakeem Nunez-Roches, who is a 29-year-old who was with the Chiefs. And then he went to the Buccaneers. He was like a 6th-round pick back in 2015 out of like Southern Miss. He's somebody that I've seen him and I've always respected him. And then just talking with people who were affiliated with the Tampa Bay program, a lot of respect. Like John Ledyard heaped praise on him as a leader. Kind of reminds us maybe a little bit of like a Jihad Ward type. It's kind of the feel that I'm getting. And just through the film that I've seen, very pleased with him as that third rotational defensive lineman behind Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, who will start in base personnel when the Giants do employ base personnel.
For me, this was like an 8.9 type of day out of Joe Schoen and the Giants.
Gotcha.
It's close to a 10. I'll explain why it's not a full 10 in a moment, but it's the ideal day for me. So as you mentioned, this is not going to be similar to the past GMs. We're just firing out in free agency, unloading money right at the beginning, even though Okereke is kind of a different example, kind of goes against that a tiny bit, but I'll explain why I'm good with that and why, you needed to do that. But this is not that kind of GM. He wants to build through the draft. He's made mention of this like 3 times to the public, and Bob Papa, who said it on his podcast, was speaking to him in the cafeteria one day, and Shane's like, look, I mean, we have some money now for free agency. Things are going to be better than last year, but this is going to be built through the draft. And that's what all the good teams do. Eventually, I want to get to the point, Nick, where the Giants have drafted so well that they're sitting out this entire day like the Ravens did today. That's the ideal goal for me. You get to a point where you do what the Ravens did. Like last offseason, the Ravens signed a cut Kevin Zeitler, right? Kevin Zeitler, an amazing year for them coming from the Giants. Had like a bounce back great year. I think he made the Pro Bowl for them. Guess what happened when they signed him to that deal? It didn't count against their compensatory pick formula. So they actually got comp picks for like the 17th million year in a row. So they're just getting free draft picks. Eventually you want to get to the point where free agency is something where you really don't use it much. You're just re-signing your own players, you're drafting, and you're signing players who are released that don't count against your comp pick formula. The Giants are not at that point yet, though. So they couldn't really use that strategy. The other side that I like of it is the Bengals strategy. The Bengals strategy is you don't go crazy right away with free agents. You don't go for the top of the market guys, and you find values. And look at what they've done over the years with the kid from the Saints who they got. I'm blanking on his name right. Yeah, Trey Hendrickson. Several other key signings that they've made over the years. That's the first one because that was just such a value steal for them. But they've made like value steals in free agency. And that's the patience model. That's the value model. And in this scenario, the Giants kind of blended those together because they didn't go crazy for a Tremaine Edmonds type. And ultimately, what they did here was come out with a goal in mind and execute on that goal. In my mind, this is why I get such a high grade for day one for me. Their goal in mind was we need to figure out a way to stop the run. We were so bad against the run. We have no options at linebacker. We have no speed at linebacker. We have no athleticism at linebacker. We also don't feel like we have any depth on the defensive line. We felt like whenever we had to take Dexter Lawrence off the field, we were a massive liability. Anyone can remember that clip from the Eagles playoff game where they put in Jelly for one snap and he gets completely derailed and tossed to the ground by Jason Kelsey, or I think it was him, or it was one of their interior guys, and then it was a wide open hole for Miles Sanders. So what they came in with was a plan for day one. The plan was we need to get better as a run defense right away, and we need to add speed and athleticism to the linebacker group. And I think that's something they did in day one. They added to their run defense immediately. They executed on that plan immediately. The reason it doesn't get a full 10 for me just has to do with the Nunez-Roches signing. So I like him. And parts of me likes the idea of getting a player like him. But the other part of me says he's about to be 30 years old. They gave him a $7.5 million guaranteed, a decent sized contract. To me, that's where you get the Bengal side of this thing, the value patient side of it. You wait. And in the second and third wave, Nunez is going to sign for half that price or 3/4 of that price. Or if you don't get him, you find someone capable who's like him, maybe younger, maybe a little older, but not going to cost nearly as much. So I like the idea there because I really wanted to shore up that run defense. I think he's going to be a really good player for them. Like you said, John Ledyard, who we've had on the podcast breaking down tape multiple times in the past during draft season. He'll come on again, most likely. He likes his film. He says he's going to offer nothing as a pass rusher, but that's fine. We know what we're getting at him. We're getting a much better version of what Justin Ellis and the kid from the Shelton gave them for the past 2 seasons in the interior of that defensive line. And that's great because they needed that right away. So that's kind of the only reason it doesn't get the full 10 for me. But I love the idea of day one of coming out and fixing your run, fixing your biggest weakness right away.
In terms of Rakeem Nunez-Roches' contract, it's only $4 million a year, I believe, right? It's that $7.5 million guaranteed. I think it's 3 years, and there's supposedly a 2-year out. I think I read, but not all the contract stipulations have been released yet to the public. So if there's anything else in there, we'll definitely report back. If I had to give a grade, I would say like a 9, like an 8.5, 9, something around there, just because you had to address the interior defensive line. You had to address a linebacker. And it's not a secret Dan, Joe Schoen has said as much. He made it clear we need to find bodies for the defensive line. Dexter Lawrence can't be averaging 55 snaps a game. Dexter Lawrence played 977, I believe it was, snaps last season. That tied for the third most with BJ Hill and a bunch of other defensive linemen who were 305, 310 pounds. This dude is 350 pounds. He can't be playing that much. You want to keep these guys fresh. You want to have them out there on the most important plays in the most important situations. So finding a guy like Nunez-Roches, you're right. Maybe from a contractual standpoint, it's not an A+. We'll have to wait and see with all the stipulations. But in terms of getting that player, that's the exact type of player that I was thinking the Giants were going to go and get. A veteran guy who is just a really sound run defender, who is not going to get bullied at the point of attack. I do not want to see the Jacksonville Jags run every single type of running scheme at the New York Giants again. I don't want to see what we saw last season from a power gap standpoint. And getting the linebacker who can actually fit, who can scrape over the top of trash and fill, like Bobby Okereke, and that defensive lineman who's not going to get moved off the spot in base personnel, that is Rakeem Nunez-Roches. I just got to start calling him R&R, though, because that's going to get really, really crazy with how fast we talk. That's the way to rectify that entire situation. So on day one, I feel like that's good. Don't need Joe Schoen to go out and spend $60 million, $70 million on some wide receiver. I don't want that to happen. This is what I wanted to happen.
Yeah, there was one way for me to give this day like a 1.0 or a 2.1. If they had signed Jacoby Myers to a $15 million per year contract, that's a 1.1 for me. And I'm like seriously questioning Joe Schoen for the rest of the time if that had happened. And that didn't happen. They didn't force anything today. They let it come to them. And you can look at Okereke and you could say, so I want to get into this signing too. And you can look at Okereke and you could say, did the Giants really do the right thing here when TJ Edwards signed for that cheap and David Long signed for that cheap? And the answer for me is yes, for a multitude of reasons. The first and most important reason is they got the guy that they wanted. They got the guy that they think fit their system best. Here's the thing with Okereke. We're going to go over some stats. We're going to go over some of the tape later on. Neither Nick or I have gotten enough to that yet, but we're going to talk about some of what we know statistically, at least so far. And you can look at his past, but remember, giving these contracts out is a projection. What the Giants are doing here is they're looking at a 26-year-old linebacker, and they're saying, we are making a projection for how he fits in Wink Martindale's system. And for how he fits in Wink Martindale's system, I'm not sure any of these other linebackers would have fitted. TJ Edwards is a guy I love. He plays in Wisconsin. But there's some good points that have been made about him playing in that Gannon system with Philly, which is nothing like the Wink Martindale system. And that's not a great thing when you take a guy from one system, you move him to another, and you hope that it's just going to translate. Then you look at David Long, the other cheap linebacker signing who has a ton of talent. And I think at his best, David Long is probably a better player than Okereke. And I think most people who watch the tape and grade these guys would say that. But David Long has had a ton of injuries in his NFL career. And I'm not so sure David Long is the guy that they want to play the specific Mike role in Wink Martindale's defense, like Okereke is. So now you take all those things into consideration and you say, oh, okay, yeah, those guys got pretty cheap deals, but Okereke was the only guy who they felt was the perfect fit for what they need for what Wink runs. And then you look at it a little further and you say, okay, it's a 4-year deal, $40 million, $22 million guaranteed. That's a pretty sizable deal. Still not quite the range of a Tremaine Edmonds, who got almost double that on an AAV. I think it was $18 million AAV for Edmonds, who the Giants were somewhat linked to just because of the Joe Schoen Bill stuff, but and 10 mil per year AAV for Okereke. And now I'm looking at a prospect or a player in Okereke who's 26 years old, freakish length. Let's take a look at that right now. 90,
yep, you got it.
98th percentile wingspan and 97th percentile arm length for him, which is great for a linebacker. You want to have that length. You want to have that length so you can get your hands up in pass lanes. You want to have that length so you can cover sideline to sideline. And in addition to that, really, really good foot speed for a linebacker. 4.58 40-yard dash, which is incredible. His broad jump was 76th percentile. This is a super athlete. He had an 8.4 RAS score back when he was drafted in 2019. 6'1", almost 6'2", 98th percentile wingspan. Got the agility, solid. The explosiveness, pretty good. And you could see it when you watch him. He's a sideline to sideline rangy kind of prospect. And linebacker, let's call him. But for the Giants, in their scenario, in my mind, Nick, he's a prospect too, because they're looking to build him and mold him in a different way in this system, because this system that Wink Martindale is different than what he's played in. They believe that he can excel and become a better player. And TLDR here is they signed him not for what he was with the Colts. He can be a much better player with the Giants. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be what Joe Schoen mentioned earlier in his combine presser. Like, we're looking for a linebacker who can shed the blocks of a 300-pound lineman and then drop in coverage. He's not Fred Warner. Guess what? No one is. If the Giants are ever going to have a Fred Warner type on this defense, they're going to have to draft him, and they're going to have to get really lucky in doing so anyway. There's probably 2 or 3 linebackers, if anything, in the NFL who could play like Warner. But I don't know that he needs to be this dominant coverage linebacker if he can do all the other things well. Or I should say dominant vertical coverage linebacker, because I think he can still cover sideline to sideline. It's the vertical routes and it's the one-on-one routes where you're going to have some question marks with him, and I'm not sure he's ever going to get to an elite level there. But if you have everything else from him, he's 26 years old. And what I really like about him, by the way, Nick, he only missed 2 games so far in his whole 4-year NFL career. That's something that they obviously stress: smart, tough, and dependable, but more importantly, dependable.
And where'd he go to school?
Stanford.
Stanford. Exactly. That's a little nod to the smart part of that. But you're right.
Yeah,
and this is going to be
Martinez.
a different. Oh, yeah. Blake Martinez, he was the last linebacker that I had confidence in. Over the last decade, what linebackers have you really had confidence in who actually played, right? Like Blake Martinez had 2020, he played. He got hurt in 2021. It just seems like the Giants have just routinely passed over this position. But now you add Bobby Okereke. He's somebody who I feel like is a true starting 3-down linebacker. Look, like you said, he's not going to be Fred Warner covering the seam, but he's not inept. He's a good athlete. He can carry the number 3 in certain situations or the tight end up the seam on a vertical route if Wink Martindale asks him to. But you brought up a really important point. There is somewhat of a projection here because he is a professional football player, no doubt, obviously, right? But Wink Martindale's system is different from Matt Eberflus and from Gus Bradley. And those are the 2 systems that he played in. Gus Bradley's still playing a lot of cover 3. I think he incorporated more cover 4 like a lot of other defensive coordinators. And Eberflus, it was a lot of cover 2, a lot of middle of the field open. Wink Martindale's going to be middle of the field closed. He's not going to have as many 4-down even fronts as Bobby Okereke has seen with those other 2 teams. So the Giants feel good enough that he's going to transition into a 3-4, if you want to call it that type of system. Again, it's positionless. I like how Wink Martindale says that. And this is a player who wasn't used too frequently as a blitzer. I believe he had 15 pressures in 2021 with 1 sack, but every other year it was like, 6 pressures, 3 pressures, 2. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't something that he did too often. But watching his tape, a little bit I saw, and we also saw him pretty extensively against the New York Giants when he elbowed Daniel Jones in the head.
He also had 17 tackles in that game.
He had 17 tackles in that game too. And that was a team that was falling apart. Jeff Saturday lost the locker room, right, Dan? Guess what? That guy was flying around till the end of the 4th quarter. He had a chip on his shoulder, right? So the New York Giants offense is going to probably have a word with him once he gets in. But in all honesty, man, I think this is a player who can go forward. If you ask him to blitz, I think he has that timing. I think he has that quick twitch. He probably has a quick 10-yard split. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he definitely seemed like he had that type of ability to penetrate and to loop and to slant and to go forward in a quick manner to where if Wink Martindale asks him to blitz, he can be an asset in that area. But that's not the reason the Giants signed him either. The Giants signed him for one reason, and that's to be the number 1 linebacker on this team and somebody who was going to be competent enough to stop the run. And that is something Okereke proved throughout his time at Indianapolis. He was, I think he was a will linebacker in that system because they had Darius Leonard, who I believe changed his name to Shaquille Leonard, but he didn't play that much this past year, if I'm not mistaken. Shaq Leonard was out for most of the season, and I believe Okereke was the one who stepped up and assumed that role along with Zaire Franklin, and both of those 2 were 2 of the better players on the Colts roster last season. So Giants got one of them, and I think that's definitely a blessing.
Definitely a blessing. And like you said, one thing that he's already done, and one thing that they need more than anything, perfect world, you get a Fred Warner type in the middle who can cover the seam the way he can and really impact and change everything you do schematically. That's not going to happen again. There's very few teams who have that. But more important than anything else this offseason was finding a linebacker with the instincts to play the run, with the ability to take the Giants and put them in a situation where they can stop power and gap, where teams aren't just running the same play. Like, remember when Washington just ran GH counter like over and over again against the Giants, like play after play after. But was that Washington or Philly? One of the teams in the division did that to them. And
it was them both.
It was both. And then you saw like the Cowboys have that game plan in the second half in that first game where they just were like, we're just running to the edge and perimeter on the Giants. We know we can do this. And now you have a guy who has literally done it at the NFL level, and he's only 26 years old. According to Next Gen Stats, Bobby Okereke generated 75 defensive stops in 2022. That was tied for 10th most among all linebackers. And according to Next Gen Stats, the Giants linebackers combined for just 87 stops. 19 fewer than any defense, which is an insane stat by Next Gen Stats. The Giants linebackers totaled 19 fewer stops, defensive stops, and that's considered play that goes for 0 or negative yards, a defensive stop. So this guy almost alone racked up more than the entire Giants linebacker core last year.
And you also got to think too, and I'm not sticking up for the Giants linebackers whatsoever. They sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those plays, anytime a team went up against the Giants defense, they were never running right at the linebacker. They were never running in the A gap. Every single run was to the outside. And
Makes
all those
it harder
linebackers
to get a stop. You're right.
Well, and then they just couldn't scrape, right? So it was obviously an indictment on their skill sets as well. But I haven't watched the Colts defense extensively, but I would imagine they saw more A gap, B gap, more runs down the middle. I know they had DeForest Buckner, but you can get a double team on him. Grover Stewart was a good interior defensive lineman, but we watched the Giants tape. No one was running up the middle against Dexter Lawrence, especially when the Giants were in base personnel. It was always to the outside because that was how you attack the Giants, because their linebackers sucked and their edges were a little, edges weren't the best against the run.
At setting the edge, not great. No. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened there. Another interesting stat from Bobby Okereke that I uncovered from Next Gen Stats, and this one I'm not sure is as telling, but according to Next Gen Stats, Okereke was tested often in 2022 as a pass coverage linebacker. He faced the most targets of any linebacker in the NFL, 78, which was 3 ahead of Drake Greenlaw. And he held his own in coverage according to Next Gen Stats. He allowed minus 2.3 receptions over expected and only 5.9 yards per target. So this is something interesting because he has been billed in some ways as a linebacker who's more of just a run first type of guy with the ability to play sideline to sideline in the run game, and maybe in that range in the pass game, but maybe not necessarily the overall coverage linebacker you want. But I thought those stats were interesting. They showed that maybe he did a better job than he's given credit for.
Well, he had 4 PBUs and an interception this past year, has 11 PBUs, 3 interceptions in his career. That's pretty good numbers for a linebacker.
Yeah.
And we're just going off stats, which is stupid. We don't like to do that here on this podcast, but neither Dan or I have had the time to review Bobby Okereke's film. But I'll get to it probably tonight, and we'll probably have a better, more comprehensive outlook on who he is as a linebacker once we do that.
Yeah, for sure. And in addition to Okereke, the Giants, a couple other interesting things I thought happened with the Giants today. We'll start with Nick Gates signing with the Commanders. That was something interesting. That was a bit unexpected. The Giants said that at the Combine, at least, that they had some initial talks with his agent, but nothing came to fruition there. And let's be fair about it. The Commanders offered him a pretty good deal. I think it's north of $5 million AAV for a player who's coming off a major injury and played last season, but didn't start the whole season. Obviously, the Giants, felt like that was a little bit out of their price range, but now that leaves them in a really interesting spot on the interior offensive line because Gates is now gone for sure. Feliciano remains a free agent. And outside of Feliciano, the Giants don't really have any kind of option right now at center. Maybe you consider moving Ben Breida in there, but that's not something you can count on by any means. Josh Azudu is supposed to be healthy for camp coming off that neck injury. He'll likely have the first crack at left guard. Right guard Glowinski, but I need some more depth there at the very least on the interior defensive line. And more importantly, I need an option at center. I don't want to leave it all to the draft. There are some players I love in the draft, specifically one from the University of Wisconsin in round 2. But, you can't count on those types of things. You can't narrow it down to 1 or 2 players in the draft and hope that they hit or hope that they fall into a position where you can draft them. So I'm very curious to see what they do now for the center position after just letting Nick Gates go. Feliciano obviously remains a free agent at this time.
Yeah, it was 3 years, $16.5 million for Nick Gates, and just for Okereke, I don't know if we ever said the numbers. 4 years, $40 million, so he's making about $10 million AAV. Those are the numbers that have been released so far, and I think this might suggest, at least, Dan, that John Feliciano could be back. And I think it always came down to, and I talked to Ed Valentine about this at Big Blue View. It always came down to you might retain John Feliciano or Nick Gates.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Giants were going to retain either the contract that the Washington Commanders just gave Nick Gates. I think that's just too much money for what the Giants wanted to give either of those players. So now with Gates out, that opens up the door for Feliciano to come back. But to your point, even if Feliciano comes back, which is not a certainty right now, I want the Giants to get another center. Like if that's in the draft, cool, whatever. Yeah. But you need to add more bodies there. And we have not had a center from the New York Giants in so damn long. We haven't had a true starting center, somebody who actually played center throughout college in quite a while. John Michael Schmitz, the kid from Minnesota, you're probably going to have to pick him at 25. I don't know if that's the best allocation of resources for the New York Giants right now is currently constructed, especially with the defensive backs and the corners that are going to be available at that point of the draft, more than likely. So I don't know if that's my favorite course of action. All I know is they need to find some bodies, and they could do that on day 2 or day 3 in free agency. I mean, looking at even some of the other free agent centers, Dan, I don't know who else is there the Giants will pursue. That's why I thought it made sense to bring Nick Gates back, just not at that number.
Yeah, that number was a little too high. I was hoping they were going to bring Gates back over Feliciano, but again, that number was high. Hopefully they can bring back Feliciano for cheaper, which I think they can, as long as they remain patient on this thing. That's the whole thing. That's, I was very happy with what Joe Schoen did today, because in the past, the Giants have been the team that jumps out and gets ahead of things and we're smarter than you. We found a guy we love and we're going to sign him. Patrick Omameh. We saw the tape. We love him. Players like that. And that's not the way to play this thing. You want to let the market come to you. The second and third waves are the best time to shop in free agency, and let Feliciano hit that second and third wave, right? Like, let him test the market, get nothing, come back, and you get him for cheaper. But you're right, Nick. They can't go into a season with just Feliciano. I'm completely out on John Michael Schmidt at 25. That would devastate me. I don't find him. Look, let me ask you this question, Nick. You've watched John Michael Schmidt a little bit, right? You watched a lot of Creed Humphrey, right?
Yeah.
Is he even remotely close to the player Creed Humphrey was? Because to me, when I watch it, I don't see the same kind of impact.
No, I liked Creed Humphrey better. I think maybe John Michael Schmidt
went what, mid-second?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it will carry over to this.
No, it doesn't. He should have been a first rounder. You're right.
Maybe John Michael Schmitz has quicker feet on the line of scrimmage than Creed Humphrey. But Creed Humphrey, he was a part of one of the best offensive lines we've seen in a while at Oklahoma, and he was a linchpin to that offensive line. The fact that he fell that far was a mistake, and I feel like the NFL will acknowledge that. Sure. But I don't think any of these centers are quite Creed Humphrey from what I've seen so far.
I would take Tippmann over John Michael Schmidt personally. I'm not looking for like a John Michael Schmidt type. That's the thing. I'm not looking for, if I'm going center, I want the impact center. I either want the move guy, like a Tippmann who can get out in space and help you on power and gap, or like a Ragnow from years ago, Frank Ragnow a few drafts ago. Like, I want the physical point of attack guy who commands. John Michael Schmidt to me looks like somebody who could easily come to the NFL and be a nothing against NFL defensive linemen, and he was just beating up on Big Ten guys. And it's not to say that's what I think he can be. I just don't see it with those types. I've seen so many of these guys come through. The kid who the Giants, some people wanted the Giants to take, who Denver got a couple years ago, who fell. The center from like Temple. No, years before that. The kid
he went to the Falcons. You talking about Matt Hennessy?
Hennessy's one of them. And then there was another one who went to the Broncos, like a Hennessy type. These guys who are like, you convince yourself.
You talking about Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU?
Cushenberry, Hennessy, both of those players come to mind for me. And Schmidt's a better player than both of those guys, but I don't see a definite if I'm going center, I want the impact center, either the move guy like a Kelsey type or the physical Frank Ragnow type at the line of scrimmage, or I'm just not going to invest there. And I'm not sure Tippmann can definitely be that out of Wisconsin, but he definitely has some traits. He definitely moves really well. And Kelsey is the best center maybe not of all time, but of our generation, probably for sure, because he can move so well in space. So I want those types of guys if I'm going to invest in that position. But obviously, like you said, the Giants need to do something at center. It can't just be John Feliciano.
Yeah, no, that would be an absolute disaster. I'm imagining they're probably going to invest in the interior offensive line in the draft if they don't do so in free agency.
Yeah,
because Joe Schoen seems to be very forward thinking. You can't be in a situation like Dave Gettleman or like Jerry Reese were in, where you had an offensive line that was aged out, and the Giants aren't in that position. They have two guys who will likely be tackles for the New York Giants for the foreseeable future. Knocking on wood, hopefully Evan Neal develops, but Andrew Thomas is an absolute home run. And then you invested a day 2 pick in Josh Azudu. So he'll likely be a part of the offensive line moving forward, especially in this season. You would imagine that he would be. You have those developmental pieces like Marcus McKethan and players like that. I don't know what to rely on with that, but the right guard position and the center position, both of those positions are up for grabs for long term, because you say, Mark Lewinsky, he's going to be here this year. Mark Lewinsky's not going to be here long term. We all know that. He's already in his 30s. He didn't even have that great a tape last season. So I would imagine that the Giants are aware of that, and they want to invest some of this young talent that's coming through the draft into those two positions specifically. And center is the one that I really want, Dan, just because we just haven't had it. I'm just done putting guards there and being like, hey, learn it. And tackles there, be like, hey, learn it. By the way, I'm going to bring up, for those watching on YouTube, some R&R highlights. We didn't really get to talk too much about his skill set. I watched a lot of his film today. So I got to his film before Bobby Okereke's, Dan. And
so why don't you do that now? Then you can dive into some things you saw.
Yeah. So to me, some of the things I liked about him, right? These are highlights. So he's not going to go out there and do this all the time. I want to make sure that that's clear. Yeah. That's what highlight means. but he is somebody who can handle responsibilities as a one gap penetrator or somebody who can two gap and read. And that's the thing I love the most about this player is he's not necessarily going to be a starter, but he can do either of those things. If you need him to penetrate, look, he is quick. He has active hands. He times the snap well. He fires off the ball, low leverage. He's only like 6'1". He's not the tallest interior defensive lineman, but he maintains that center of gravity, exploding off the line of scrimmage with good balance and heavy hands to kind of do things like this. And then you have this play, if you're watching right now, he tracks down DJ Moore, similar to what Dexter Lawrence did. I don't know what it is about the Carolina Panthers and getting tracked down to the sideline, but it definitely happens. But you also see, Dan, plays where he can stack, shed, position his hips into one gap, read where the ball carrier is going, discard, make a tackle, or restrict that gap. So he's a gap control defensive lineman as well, although he is quick and he can penetrate. So I like the fact that he has both of those skill sets that whatever Wink Martindale wants to do, he can more than likely execute. And he's only going to have to do this, 23, 25, maybe 30 snaps a game. So I think this was a really good signing, even though the money, I'm kind of with you. It's a little bit a lot. Like you can maybe wait and find somebody else, but I think they specifically wanted him, maybe because of it's his character, right? Maybe it's because of that infectious personality that he has, or maybe it's just because he can do a lot of different things for your defense. He's one of those guys that won't be heralded. Like he's probably going to win a lot of our unheralded player on the defense. That's the kind of guy that I'm envisioning for the New York Giants. And you're right. You brought this up a little earlier. This is a significant upgrade over Justin Ellis and Danny Shelton. Like it's not even comparable. They're different types of players, but he's only 20, he's 29. So he's getting a little long in the tooth, but you can play interior defensive line for quite a while. I think he's much better than Danny Shelton and Justin Ellis are, though.
And I like how you said there is like an out before year 3 if he gets to that age where he maybe has a fall off in his play, which we hope won't happen, but you just never know. And I think what you said is really important there. Like there was no way they were going to be able to have a good run defense with no defensive line depth. That's like one of the first things Joe Schoen said after the season was, I wish we had not been in that salary cap situation where we can barely call up guys from the practice squad. We have so little funds against the cap because we weren't able to add defensive line depth, and we knew we needed it. And it was so obvious against the Eagles in that game. So yeah, it may have played a little bit of a premium here for a player who maybe they could have waited it out, and I'm not so certain his mark would be there now. In Okereke, they couldn't have waited out. They found their guy. They liked their guy. He's 26. He's rangy. He's athletic. He's long. He's a linebacker, and he has production at the linebacker position with 100 plus 117 or whatever solo tackles. That's crazy numbers. That wasn't a wait and see approach, but a guy like Roches Nunez, Quincy Roches Nunez. No.
You're close. Nunez-Roches
is maybe a guy who they could have waited on, but I like what you said. They feel like he was the guy they wanted for the specific role. And in the end, ultimately, it's not that crazy numbers wise. The cap has gone up to the point where $5 million contracts are just not that crazy.
Exactly. And this is somebody who played I would say probably half of his snaps as a nose tackle at 307 pounds. So you're going to stick him as a 4-eye or a 5 technique, whatever you want to do, whatever front you want to employ in base personnel. He's going to be able to hold up at the point of attack. I'm not worried about that. And if you want to kick him inside for whatever reason, you can if you want to spell Dexter Lawrence because he has that experience in doing so. So I really appreciate that about his skill set as well.
And this will be the first of what I think will be multiple interior defensive line signings. I think the Giants will sign another interior defensive lineman in free agency. That one I think will be in the second or third wave, though. 1-year deal, cheap, 1.2, 2.1 million type of thing, maybe 2.5 type of deal.
And we also we expect Leonard Williams' contract is going to get lowered down, but what if it's not?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not? You need depth. You need to find players. What if something happens in those renegotiations to where Joe Schoen's like, yo, we can't figure this out. Like, I can't pay this guy. Like, who knows what could happen? I don't envision that, but it's definitely plausible. And either way, if he's on your roster or not, you need more interior defensive linemen. And think about Joe Schoen. Where did he come from, Dan? He came from Buffalo. What did Buffalo do from 2019 to 2021 or 2022? It was draft Ed Oliver. It was draft Gregory Rousseau. It was draft Carlos Boogie Basham. It was draft AJ Epinesa. It was draft a bunch of guys who can be in a cycle through your interior defensive linemen, a bunch of long, strong interior defensive linemen or edge rushers for AJ Epinesa. For those who have been listeners of the podcast for a while, they'll get that inside joke.
All that to watch Joe Burrow get rid of the ball in 1.3 seconds and get crushed by them at home, right? Like
I know, right?
I'm telling you, man, pass coverage over what's that little that greater than side pass coverage over pass rush at this point, at least against the great quarterbacks. They're getting rid of the football fast. But I know what you're saying. He comes from a group, Joe Schoen, Brandon Bean. These people want to invest in the interior defensive line. More importantly, they want to invest in the trenches, which I find very important in general. Look, we saw what happened against the Eagles. The Giants lost that game in the trenches. There's no denying it. And in the current setup of the NFC, the way things are, especially if Aaron Rodgers moves out of conference, which could happen at any moment now, I feel like. I got a faulty source today that said the deal was done from somebody I know who knows Robert Saleh. And
does he know Trey Wingo too?
No, it's a different thing. And I texted a bunch of my Jets friends, and now one of them's really mad at me. Shout out Dave Sarner. You don't listen to the podcast, Dave, but you said you will consider finding me. He lives in Long Island. He's going to consider finding me and cutting my head off if the deal doesn't go through. So I know how tense things are for Jets fans right now. This is like their Super Bowl. This is the most insane thing they need this. They really freaking need this. So I kind of want it to happen too. It's good. I
low-key want it to happen. I think
I've never hated the Jets. I don't really care about the Jets. And more importantly, that gets Rodgers out of conference.
Yeah. I mean, that's
more
the primary reason why I want it to happen.
Sorry, what'd you say?
So that's the primary reason why I want it to happen.
Right.
Like if he's out of the conference and the Giants find a way to deal with Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, who are probably the two best quarterbacks who are now in the NFC, the Giants could really have an inside track if they get hot at the right time. Like who's a better quarterback than those two right now? Like you got Matt Stafford,
maybe, yeah.
Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. Like the NFC is pretty damn weak if Aaron Rodgers, even with Aaron Rodgers there.
Yeah, they're gonna have Caleb Williams there soon next year. The Falcons or something to get him.
Drake, man.
They'll have whoever Panthers select, but we'll see what happens there. But the point I was trying to make anyway, which I did two random tangents off of, one with Aaron Rodgers, was in the NFC, the way it's currently set up, you need to be able to beat the two teams that destroy the trenches. That's the Niners and the Eagles. And the Niners today signed Javon Hargrave. So they're getting even stronger in the trenches on that side of the ball. So now you got these two trench beaters in the Eagles and the Niners. And to some extent, the Cowboys are trench beaters too. Like they're not as the same way on the defense side of the ball, and their offense line's getting a little older, but Tyler Smith had a great rookie season for them. Better than Evan Neal by far. And
much better than Evan Neal.
Sucks because he was drafted way later, and we didn't think he was anywhere near prospect of Evan Neal, but things happen, and he had a better season in year one than Evan Neal for whatever reason. But these are teams that win in the trenches. So finding guys like that, even if you have to pay a little bit up for a player like Nunez, is it Roches Nunez or Nunez-Roches?
It's Nunez-Roches. So think of the name. So there's three words, right? But there's only two letters that start each word. There's an R, an N, and an R. And think about it as a sandwich. And the N goes in the middle and the R's are on the outside.
Okay. Nunez-Roches.
So it's always Nunez-Roches. Rakeem Nunez-Roches.
Roches. Okay.
Can you roll your R's?
No, not very well.
You kind of did there.
There's a little bit, but I mean,
I'm giving you credit.
Okay, I'll take the credit. But yeah, I mean, like you said, this is what they had to do, in my opinion. Day one, priority number one. Figure out a way to stop the run. Figure out a way to add athleticism and speed to linebacker. They did both those things. They also had another move we didn't discuss. They brought back Matt Breida, $2.1 million. I'm torn on this one. I like it because I like the player, and I thought he had a great impact. We considered him an unheralded player. When they started to use that pony package with him and Barkley on the field, it was great. But at the same time, Nick, it concerns me that they're taking themselves out of the running back market in this draft. And this draft at running back, man, it's just – there's going to be teams lapping the field with value plays in round 2, 3, 4, even 5 at the running back position. I don't want to miss out on all that because we have Breida, Brightwell, and Barkley back here. That means now after the Breida signing, the Giants have now signed 2 running backs this offseason in Barkley and Breida. That really, to me, signals that it's a lot less likely they're going to draft a running back. And maybe next class will be good too. I don't have any clue what the 2024 running back class looks like. But I love this 2023 running back class, man. And it would be a shame to me if the Giants don't add talent there, because we always talk about how are the Giants going to fix this offense? How are they going to add playmakers for Daniel Jones and talent? Well, it doesn't just have to be at wide receiver. It can be at tight end. It can be at running back too, especially since the Giants have shown the willingness to play the pony package. And yeah, I like Breida. He's good. But if they added some serious talent in the draft at running back and they played the pony with Barkley and that guy on the field at the same time, now you have other playmakers on the field. Now you make things easier for Giants, for Daniel Jones, and you have more explosive play potential. So I just hope this doesn't mean they're out of the market in the draft.
I don't know if it does because you have Saquon Barkley right now on a franchise tag. You want
True.
to get a deal done long term, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. And even with Matt Breida, I don't know the way the contract looks. Can the Giants cut him at the end of training camp with little to no effect? I'm not really 100% sure. And then there's Gary Brightwell, who we like, who's on a rookie deal. So I think the team likes him just by the way they've used him. He was an asset as a special teamer, so likely he'll be back. But I don't think it precludes you from going out and taking a value pick like a Tajay Spears or a Zach Charbonnet. Maybe those guys are a little bit high, but maybe somewhere on day 3, if you like a running back, you could still go out there and get him and then just have a competition and may the best man win. But you're right. It doesn't look as likely now that they brought Breida back. But you're also right because Breida, I feel like he had a bigger impact on that offense down the stretch. The Giants probably still win against Minnesota in the wild card game, but he had an impact, man. That whole game plan was revolved around the pony personnel package, and a lot of the big important plays happened when the Giants were in 21 personnel.
Exactly. That's a great point. And that's why I'm torn on it, because I like bringing him back. He was effective. He's fast. He knows the system. It's good. I just, like you said, I hope it doesn't. We'll see what happens in the draft because there still are options for them. They could also cut a player like Brightwell, even though he's good on special teams, if they find someone they love in the draft.
And that's the thing. You don't have a long-term plan at running back if Saquon Barkley isn't resigned. And if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, the Giants aren't relying on Matt. Matt Breida is not a 16-touch kind of guy.
Neither is Brightwell.
And Brightwell, I think Brightwell has more of a chance to be that than Matt Breida. But my point is there's still room for another running back to be added to that roster. I wonder what they think about like Jashawn Corbin, who was an undrafted free agent out of Florida State. Do they have any sort of affinity for him? How did he develop over the last year? Because that was a name that generated a lot of buzz early in training camp, and then he's just an undrafted guy. He's not going to make the roster.
I have a new running back prospect, by the way, Nick, that I'm starting to warm up big time too. That's going to be more in the mold of the Khalil Herbert call I had from a few years ago. I don't like him as much as Khalil Herbert, but just in the sense that you could get Khalil Herbert in round 5, and that's where the Bears got him. I think you can get this guy in round 5 or 4.
All right, give me the conference.
Yeah, I want to see if you can get this because you might have started watching him. They play, what are they playing now? I think they play in the Big 12. Pretty sure they play in the Big 12.
The Big 12?
Yeah.
It's not Deuce Vaughn, is it?
No, Deuce Vaughn's amazing too, but I think Deuce Vaughn will probably be around 5 or 4 too because of his size. He'll probably be, and I love Deuce Vaughn, but this guy I think could actually be a 3-down back if he hits his ceiling. And yet, despite that, will only go in round 4 or 5 because the class is so freaking stacked at running back. Like, you're not going to put this guy ahead of Tajay Spears. You're not going to put this ahead of. There's like 9 running backs who are ranked ahead of him and probably go ahead of him. And so a 10th running back in any NFL draft doesn't go until round 4 or 5. But I really like him, and I'm starting to watch some film on him. And was
he on a very successful team in 2022?
Yeah,
you're talking about Kendry Miller.
Yes, I am.
Oh, I've watched Kendry Miller. Yeah, I love Kendry Miller's team.
Yeah, I really like what I'm seeing so far. And you can get it. You could probably get him on round 4, to be honest, with how stacked this class is.
Well, we might do a draft profile on him, so I don't want to read too much, but I have a whole evaluation on Kendry Miller. I feel like he's slippery. I feel like he is somebody who had like unique contact balance. He bounces off guys like a pinball machine, man.
Dude, he had a run against Kansas State in the championship game where it was one of the best vision cut. I don't even know how to describe. I'll have to show you it. He like, I can't even break this down. I'll show you when we do the profile on him and we'll go over that play. But that was the one that stood out to me. When I watched that play, I was like, yeah, this dude has it.
I literally have these 3 descriptors right back to back. Gets skinny through holes, runs through arm tackles. Dangerous, slippery ability in space, has tricks up his sleeves, spins, jukes. You don't really see it coming. Powerful enough to lower his shoulder and fall through contact, elusive enough to spin away from contact.
Yep, that's exactly what I saw out of him. And I saw like you said before, the contact balance. That's always the trait I look for the most with these running backs. It's my favorite trait in a running back.
TCU running back. He did not play in the national championship game. He was injured.
Yep, TCU running back Kendry Miller. Again, stacked running back class. So this dude will probably be available round 4, if we're going to be honest. Maybe even round 5, the way this thing goes. It's just so many running backs that are sick in this class. So, again, we'll see what happens with the Breida signing, but I hope it doesn't preclude them from adding running back talent because a lot of people listen to that and be like, wait a second, Dan and Nick, aren't you guys the ones who say weren't all in on re-signing Barkley to a 5-year contract, yada, 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 paying all this money? Those are two separate things. Drafting running backs and re-signing them to second deals are completely separate things. I am in the business of drafting running backs. I just have a certain strategy for it. I let them play out their rookie contract and I get rid of them before they fall off. It's the only position I would play like that, by the way, but which is kind of how it is.
The reason why we wouldn't re-sign Saquon Barkley is because we would draft somebody. It's all about the rookie contract. That's what it all comes down to. Rookie contract and shelf life. That is why Dan and I are such big believers in selecting running backs somewhere on day 2, late day 2, day 3, just not in the top 5.
Yeah, and more importantly, don't try to allocate cap to them. But look, they love Barkley as a leader. They're going to give it a go, and hopefully he can stay healthy for the duration of his contract, or 60% of it, whatever it ends up being when he signs that deal. Because I do think the Giants will come to terms with at least a 3-year deal with Saquon Barkley. We'll see what ends up happening there. One more thing, Nick, before we close out here from day 1 free agency for the Giants recap. Julian Love not re-signed by the Giants yet. Safety market heating up in a lot of ways. The Bengals just lost both starting safeties. I've seen Love have ties to the Bengals, who might look to get him. What are your thoughts on Julian Love, his market? What's going to happen here with the Giants and Love?
Joe Schoen has addressed the safety position in some of his press conferences, saying how deep it was in free agency and in the draft.
Yeah.
I think they like Julian Love. I think Julian Love is a team leader. I think they would re-sign Julian Love if it was 6, maybe even 7. But I think his market's more like 10, 11, somewhere around there, like what Marcus Williams got last year from the Ravens. So I think they're going to let Julian Love go, more than likely. Judy Batista on NFL Network said that he has a robust market. And I was thinking he would go to the Bears because he's from Illinois. I think his girlfriend's from Chicago. He's very affiliated with that city. Right, went to Notre Dame, which is in Indiana, but still, it's in that general area. But the Bears went out and they spent all their money, it seems like, right? They just went on a spending spree. Julian Love is still a free agent. I don't think Julian Love will be back with the New York Giants. I think the Giants are probably going to sign another free agent at the position, a cheaper one, who can fill the role and possibly draft someone. And I'm curious as to how this front office views a player like Dane Belton, who, similar to Micah McFadden, both day 3 picks by this regime, who seem to have rocky rookie seasons. They still couldn't believe that those players are going to be assets moving forward. I'm just not 100% certain about that, but I'm not optimistic about Julian Love returning to New York. And I do think that will be a loss because I'm a fan of his game.
Yeah, I'm probably with you right there. I'm not all that optimistic about returning because it's a little different situation than the Slayton situation, who also wasn't re-signed by the Giants today, Darius Slayton, because in Love's situation, the market's already been dictated at safety. Several safety deals have already been signed. That market's going, it's rolling. The market value's been set. So it could be a matter of hours right now before Julian Love signs with another team. And we already know from what we've seen from Joe Schoen, he's not playing the Gettleman game. He's not playing the Jerry Reese game. He's going to wait a lot of this out. He's a tough to go. He waited out the last minute with Daniel Jones' contract, right? And then played that Barkley deal the same way, like to the point where if we didn't get that Jones deal in, Barkley was going to hit free agency. We're going to be able to tag him, and we didn't care. Joe Schoen, I'm saying, as the we here. He didn't care. Like, he was playing at a certain hard style. And so I think he's going to have that same hard style with all his negotiations for the players he's re-signing. Julian Love, Darius Slayton. So in Slayton's case, the longer this wide receiver market drags out, the better for the Giants, because at that point, they have a better chance to bring him back. First of all, they'll have a clearer idea of where they sit from a salary cap standpoint, where they sit from a roster standpoint, because all their plans in free agency will already have been settled. They'll know who they could have got. They'll know who they did get, like in cases like Okereke and Q&R. What are we calling him? R&R.
R&R.
R&R, rest and relaxation, whatever it is.
Recuperation.
That's what I think about when I hear R&R. But but they'll already have their plans set and played out by that point. Then you could re-sign a guy like Darius Slayton. But I think Julian Love potentially signs before that point for the Giants, where they've let everything play out and they've waited it out. So I would probably guess that you're right in that one, in that regard.
So Jesse Bates, I just looked up his contract.
Yeah.
It was a 4-year deal with $16 million per year. Wow. Is that correct with the Falcons? I think that's what Rap Sheet. I think that's what Rap Sheet tweeted. I'm seeing a screenshot of Rap Sheet.
Jesse Bates is definitely another level ahead of Love.
That's my point.
Honestly, so I would argue Marcus Williams is a much better safety than Julian Love. I would much rather have a Marcus Williams than a Julian Love. Williams can patrol the deep hat. I don't know. If
just
Love's
don't have
getting that kind of money, I'm way out on Love.
Just don't have him cover Steph Diggs along the sideline. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But they like that signing. He was really good. I don't know. Yeah. If Love's in that price range, it's probably not for me, I would say.
I think Love is going to be somewhere between like 10, 11 maybe.
Even
I'm not
that
even
is
really
one thing.
certain
I'm
about
out on
that.
that range for him personally.
As am I.
Yeah,
Especially if
unfortunately.
I haven't gotten to the film of a lot of the safeties in this class, but if it is as deep as Joe Schoen has suggested, then I'm certainly interested. That's a position though. If Love does vacate, that's another position that you need to just automatically be like, Giants are going to be in this market. I think they would
In
replace
the
it
draft.
with a veteran though in the
Yeah,
draft.
I
Yeah.
would. I think you're right with a veteran because I don't know. I mean, Joe Schoen said it's a deep safety class, but I haven't really seen too much buzz yet on the safeties. I haven't put any real attention to it because it's not
Yeah.
not in the immediate needs for the Giants, and I'm focusing on other positions for now. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Just looking at the overall board and stuff like that from all the just research I've done so far on the draft, it hasn't seemed like that great of a safety draft for me. But I don't know. We'll see.
I'm working through
Yeah.
the cornerbacks right now, and I watched Deontay Banks today. That's a guy Dan Schneider is going to like.
Oh, nice. Because I think that's a guy Wink Martindale is going to like. So that's a good sign.
Oh yeah, all the movement skills, athletic ability, fluid hips, all the stuff that you need. It's just 2021. He missed basically that entire season after the Howard game in week 2 with a shoulder injury, which is something that I'm not a huge fan of, Dan. I don't like seeing these corners with shoulder injuries. It reminds me of Sam Beal.
True. That ruined his whole career. So we'll see that. That's Deontay Banks, the corner out of Maryland, just for those who are following along. But yeah, that's all we have for today right now on the day one recap of Giants free agency. Big signings today were Okereke, R&R, who we're calling him now, Breida. They let Nick Gates sign with the Commanders, and everyone else so far is in holding period. So hopefully no news broke is the time we were recording this, but we'll be back as soon as we have more news on the Giants. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.